This episode's guest is one of the most inspirational people I know. Calleigh Little is, put simply, an adventurer. Most recently, she has completed the Appalachian Trail, but her resume of trek-related challenges does not end there. She's also a thru-skater. Thru-skating is basically backpacking on a skateboard. Her adventures range from crossing state lines, crossing an entire country, riding down coastlines, and everything in between. We got to talk a lot about what these adventures look like, and what compels individuals to even do them in the first place. Calleigh also shared what's next on her calendar, although, full disclosure, part of that adventure has unfortunately been cut short because tornadoes are not skatable. She also has plans for Miami Ultra Skate though, so if you're going there and listening to this before the event, best of luck to you. If you're hearing this after, you will indeed have an interesting perspective on this episode. As always, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Skating in Circles. I'm here with Calleigh Little today. Calleigh, how you doing?
I'm great. How's it going?
Going pretty well. Where are you right now? I know you're traveling around. For the viewers, so they know, what's your status? Where are you living?
Yeah. So right now I'm doing the van life, and I'm actually at Blumenstein Farms. I don't think he calls it a farm, but I'm at Clark's house in Tennessee, and where he builds his beautiful cabinets and audio supplies. I guess this is now a sponsored post by Blumenstein Audio.
Yeah. Thank you, Blumenstein Audio, for bringing us Calleigh Little today. Yeah, that's an adventure. So you're living in the van, and you're kind of moving around from place to place, and you've got some exciting things planned we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Van life's good, though? You like it?
Yeah, so I've been living in the van ever since October when I finished hiking the Appalachian Trail and my attempt at skateboarding across the country.
Right, yeah. For those listening who might want to get into van life, you say, go for it?
Yeah, I think that you need to be a very particular person. I've had to adjust my lifestyle quite a bit. I live in an Astro van, so it's more like a minivan. There's not a lot of space. It's teeny tiny. You got to kind of pick your luxuries. Like I have silk sheets in my minivan, which I sleep in. That's my luxury. So if I'm ever so slightly not level when I park, I will literally slip off the bed. But in general, van life is good. It's easy for me. I have so many friends that are dispersed all over the place. So I'm like pretty confident a lot of the time that I can travel wherever, phone a friend, and find a lawn to park or whatever. And if not, there's always BLM land, national parks. So, I feel like I have kind of always got a home. It's just like I'm just carrying my bed around with me.
That's so cool. It seems like you're a traveler.
I kind of learned a long time ago that I'm not ever going to be normal. I'm not really ever going to, I can't do the 9-to-5 job thing. I just don't have the attention span or the motivation for it. I can't do the home life thing. I get pretty stir crazy pretty fast. And I've done so many adventures since, over the last 10 years that I've found that I'm happiest when I'm adventuring. So, don't mess with a good thing, keep yourself adventuring. And, I took a hiatus of adventuring, and then I just jumped headfirst into doing the Appalachian Trail. And that was like, wow, suddenly I'm happy again. Suddenly I realize everything that I missed. Why am I going to stop? And as I got closer to the end of the Appalachian Trail, I'm like, well, there's what's for me after this, because I'm certainly not going to just go to a desk job or anything like that. So that's kind of like what I've been going through, is kind of figuring out a way to make my life in a way that I can just travel all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as you know, one of the questions I ask a lot of people is what motivates you? And would you say this is kind of like going to a new place is kind of what gets you out of the van or out of the bed? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that motivate me. Most of it is, like personal relationships with people, right? I find that I can't exist in a group for too long. I tend to latch onto people. I become very codependent very easily. And what motivates me is realizing these things about myself, knowing my faults, and kind of seeking a new way to kind of adjust and deal with these things. Like depression comes really, really easily for me if I'm, especially in the winter when it snows. I don't know what it is, but it just starts to wear down on me. And, you put on a lot of weight, you eat a lot of food, you get depressed, you don't want to get up and go anywhere. So, what motivates me is kind of keeping things fresh, because if I don't keep things fresh, I fall into old habits.
Hmm.
That was what I learned in the last year on the Appalachian Trail, that I'm happiest when I'm moving.
Movement is good. Yeah. I like that. Happiest when moving. I feel like there's probably a few others, especially listening, who that resonates with them quite a bit. Speaking of skateboarding, right? What we talk about on the show. When was your first time skating, would you say?
Oh man, I mean, I grew up skateboarding. My friend group always was skateboarding, but I was always the loser. I had to have an 8.5 inch, popsicle deck. I had to have the big deck, and then when I realized that longboards were a thing, I was like, damn, I got to get one of those. Through college, I was delivering pizzas with a skateboard in the little town of Salem, Massachusetts. It's not really a little town; it's a city. But um, and then I would skate down hills. I would get college friends, and we would skate down hills together all the time. And that was like super kooky stuff. And then it was finally when I first really started like skating and getting into skating was I got a DUI. While ago, a long, long time ago, I got a DUI, and I lost my car in the process. So I couldn't drive to work anymore, which is 8.5 miles to work. I was working at like a Whole Foods, and it was winter in Massachusetts. So I was trudging through the snow uphill both ways, and it was like crazy, so I was doing 17 miles a day to work and on the way back. And I started just spending my paycheck, and I was like, I got to get better gear. I got to get bigger wheels, better trucks, maybe a board that can withstand, the snow and the salt and the ice. And, so I started putting my paychecks actually into more skateboarding stuff. And I was like, hey, guess what? I just did 8.5 miles in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the time was. And I would keep trying to test myself and get better. And then I started using my vacation time to actually go farther. So, I remember I took a week off to try and skate to New York City. And, it was the middle of winter, but I was like,
Nice.
I gotta go. And so, those were like my first times really like getting into skating and wanting to skate. And then that was when I like started posting online, and I found someone who was like, hey, people do this shit competitively, right? And I was like, what, really? And that was how I heard of the ultra skate. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go in, I'm going to make all these losers feel really bad about themselves because I'm the best.
Right.
And, and I was super humbled. I went into ultra skate and I was super duper humbled. And I was like, wow, I found my people who like to go fast and they like to go far.
That's so cool. That's funny. I think Angel Miguel said the same thing about his first experience. Was like, oh, I'm gonna crush these guys. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
No one's better than me in this town, And it's like,
right.
well,
Right.
Turns out that's funny.
Yeah. I mean, I think we hear that a lot. I think, there's a couple of people I could pick out just off the top of my head that have and we see this, if you're in the Facebook Distance Skateboarding group, every once in a while, there's some new guy who comes in and is like, hey, what's up? I'm going to beat the world record. And when everyone's like, oh, you again, there's always going to be a new one. They come in, and then they get humbled. They realize, the disc skate community is a pretty cool community, and then then they fall in line, and then they get good. And they do well.
Right. It's a journey. Everyone's got to have that. It's easy to underestimate too, like how much some of this stuff takes when it's such a long grind and like.
Oh yeah. And our races, we do speed races, and they're over fast, and they don't really scratch that itch. And then we do long races, and it's like, oh, holy shit, this is 24 hours of skateboarding.
Yeah.
There is no in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said you were from Salem, Massachusetts, like the witch.
I went to college in Salem, Massachusetts. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And your first sort of attempt at riding like a really long distance was trying to make it to NYC in one go, New York City?
Yeah, well, that was like my first planned trip, but I had my goal was to skate across every state line that borders Massachusetts. So you have Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont. And so that's 5 borders across Massachusetts. So I had done all of them, and New York was the final one. So I was leaving from the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, which is fairly smack in the center. So so I went from Worcester to Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. I went from Worcester to Rhode Island. I went from to Providence, Rhode Island. Worcester to I think it was in Hartford, Connecticut. Worcester to just over the border in Vermont. That was a 100-mile trip, and that was to the town of Satan's Kingdom, Vermont. And then I did New Hampshire. Yeah. And then New Hampshire, like I said, was Hampton Beach. So the next goal was just get to NYC. My goal was to head west, straight west across Massachusetts. I didn't quite make it. It was snowing like crazy, and I was just, a kook at the time. So I didn't have my adventure chops yet.
It's like another one of those underestimate the challenge things, right? You did it in the winter. It's
right.
like really silly.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. All of my extreme trips seem to start in the winter. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. For some things, I guess it would make sense, right? If you were starting in the South.
Right. Yeah. Well, so when I did my first cross-country adventure, I started in Oregon, and it was like October 9th. So I was basically running into winter the whole time that I did it. And then this last trip that I just did, I left the Canadian border, and and it was September 25th. So it was getting pretty cold, up towards Canada. And, and then I started the Appalachian Trail, and I did that in March. It was 7 degrees my first night on the mountain. So, I tend to find myself in the middle of winter. I don't know why. I hate the snow. I hate the cold more than anything.
And yet you decide to be out in it for all these rides. Being on the Appalachian Trail in March, and it was freezing, that must have been... You started in the South, though, because you started in the North, it wouldn't be doable, correct?
Right, yeah. So basically, you either start in Georgia at Springer Mountain, which is about 45 minutes north of Atlanta, or you start at Mount Katahdin, which is in the middle of nowhere, Maine, and that's... You can't leave from Katahdin until like July, because that's when the snow really starts to finally melt and everything. And then you can't, and then Springer Mountain you can leave whenever, but the best weather is to start kind of like the early April area, and then you head north, and then you end up in Katahdin by next winter.
Nice. Carlos Montalvo, our Chief Ladiga organizer, is coming to visit me in March. And he wants to do the White Mountain. He wants to do Mount Washington, which is like the sketchiest mountain on the East Coast. And he wants to do it in March, early March, which is like sometimes you just can't. Like
I don't think they'll even let you up there.
You can hike it. You can hike it pretty much all year round. The
Katahdin they won't let you up.
Yeah,
they won't let you up Katahdin, but they will Mount Washington. Yes,
which is weird because Mount Washington seems sketchier, but.
Well, Mount Washington has a lot of different paths up it. I mean, there's a road. You could walk up the road.
And the road is closed. Yeah. The road will be closed until like May or something. So you can't drive up it until the summer. But yeah, we're going to have an event. If I say that because Mount Washington's got like all that weird weather, but like other parts of the White Mountains will be fine. So we'll find something to do, but I don't know if we'll do that.
Yeah, that'll be cool. You got to be careful. There was a guy who just died in the Whites.
That's what I told him.
2 days ago. Someone just died there. Yeah. Someone who I met on the trail, actually. He just passed away. He was just hiking the Whites. He was trying to do they call it a duratesma. It's banging all 48 4,000-foot mountains in the Whites. Doing them all in one go is called a duratesma, and I think he was attempting it. I'm not sure on the specifics. Someone else can totally, adjust my facts here, but he was attempting it, and I believe he died from exposure. It's just too cold. He didn't turn back when he should have, and so you be careful out there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like super cautious. And Carlos like, I think we can do it. I read some reviews. I'm like, I've read some reviews too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're not great. Yeah, you can easily die if you just underestimate a simple like weather change, right? Like you get
Yeah.
whiteouts and then you don't know where you are and then you're fucked.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't have to worry about that until you get to pretty much New Hampshire. So, like, the whole AT is kind of, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's certainly easier than New Hampshire and Maine. So
Interesting.
you have 11 states of like a challenge, and then you have 2 states of just like kick your ass.
Right. I remember you saying Pennsylvania was tough for you, right? Was that what it was?
Uh, no, Pennsylvania I enjoyed a lot, but
Okay.
Pennsylvania is the most fear-mongered state of the Appalachian Trail,
Ah,
because that's when it turns to rock. So you're just coming off of Virginia when you get to Pennsylvania, which is Virginia is just straight up, straight down, straight up, straight down, and then you get to Virginia or Pennsylvania, and it's flat. But there's rocks everywhere, so your feet hurt all the time. You're rock hopping all the time. You can't just zone out and walk before. It's like the first time that the trail becomes different. So it's
mhm.
like a notable area. Yeah. Um, but yeah, hiking the AT, all around the whole thing, it was a challenge the whole way. There was not a single day where I was like, oh, that was a great, easy day of hiking. It was hard all the way through.
Right. I feel like East Coast hiking is very much like you explained. Like, you can't really chill too much. Like some parts probably, but
Yeah.
like up here where I've gone, it's a lot of just like scrambling up little rocks, and then you've got
Hmm.
some weird windy section that's got a bunch of roots and stones you got to step over.
Yeah. I lived in Oregon, and you can go in 30 minutes in any direction no matter where you are in Oregon, and there's a beautiful hiking trail. It's easy, there's no scrambles, it's a nice beautiful grade. And then you come to the Massachusetts, or where I lived in Massachusetts, but you come anywhere on the East Coast and it's scrambles, it's straight up, and you realize that, it's because the Appalachian Mountains are the oldest mountains in the world,
Yeah.
right? So they've had centuries of people hiking up and down them, but just psychos, just people like in the Whites. There's I forget what mountain it is. It's like towards the end of the Whites, but the path was carved by these 2 hikers, and they just went straight up a waterfall. So when you're going northbound on the AT and you're coming down, you're actually getting dumped on by a waterfall in the middle of like the cold weather as fall sets in, and you're just coming down this mountain getting dumped on by a waterfall, and it just because nobody else has ever plotted another path. So in
Wow.
the West, where they make all their paths because of cows and they follow the cows along, so they're nice easy grades. The East Coast is very, very different. It's a totally different beast of hiking. I don't know what it is.
Some random dudes just went up a waterfall and now that's the route. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's very real. I don't know why, but, coming from the skateboarding, community, we kind of realize, endurance people are psychos, in a lot of different ways. Hiking is, probably, for me, it's been an amazing cross training. And, you kind of get the mindset. I met so many different hikers doing the Appalachian Trail, and all of them come from the same cut of cloth that distance skateboarders are. There's usually some underlying goal within these people, or there's some kind of trauma that forced them out, and it's something. There's always some tick in someone's brain that either makes them an endurance skater, and or makes them a hiker. And I said this yesterday to you, but I call it main character syndrome. There's main characters all over hiking. There's main characters all over skateboarding. So it's people who have something to prove, something to defeat, and that's just the culture that we have. So that's why hiking and skateboarding, they kind of fell in line for both of me, and you see it, like as you talk to skateboarders, you see it as you talk to hikers. It's very interesting.
I love that main character syndrome. It's such a good way to describe it. Especially,
Yeah.
like we were just talking about people will come out and be like, oh, I can do that. It's like, because you think you're the main character, you're going to be the
Right.
hero. You think you're the hero. And like,
Yeah.
for some, that's actually what gets you out the door, right? And like gets you motivated. And it's not necessarily a bad thing,
Yes.
but
It's
recognizing
not
it is
necessarily a
helpful.
bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And for me personally, I've come a long way. I've had to humble myself in a lot of different ways. I've had to have some humility about, my successes and my failures, and that's been an awesome coming of age story for me,
Yeah.
but I came out strong. Even when I was doing the AT, I'd come out and I'd be like, hey, what's up, I'm Callie. And they'd be like, oh, hey, I'm whatever. And then I'd be like, what's got you hiking? They're like, oh, I dreamed of this my whole life. And I'm like, well, I didn't really dream of hiking the Appalachian Trail my whole life. I was just looking for another challenge. And then I'm like, oh, I skateboarded across the country. I've cycled across the country. I've done this and that. And they're like, oh, I work at a bookstore, and so I'm like trying to tone down my own main character syndrome to adjust and meet people on the fly. It's just different parts of the story that we're all at. And as I go along, I humble myself and realize, I'm not the I'm not the great skateboarder that I thought that I was. I'm a competitive skateboarder. I'm not the great hiker that I came out and thought that I would be. I was a new hiker, and for the first time, it was the first time for me being a new person at something. I thought it was very a new angle to take on life.
Yeah. And you were talking about like personal relationships earlier, about like what motivates you. And I think being able to recognize that like the person who works in a bookstore is also a main character, right? They've got a whole
Right.
life they've led up to that point. They just might not be telling you everything about them, right? And like being able to talk to someone, listen to them, and like get to know their stories is a skill, and like it will help you like gain that humility, right? And it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing out there, right?
Yeah, yeah. And with the AT, sure, I could have done the whole thing alone and been like, I did it. I did it with no help from anybody. I tackled all these miles. It was all me, all me. But very quickly, I fell into a group of people. I adjusted. I did less miles some days because I met friends. And like I'm saying, with this main character syndrome that I think that a lot of people have, finding the humility to make friends and build a community and practice and train and go and do all this, it's all a part of the process. And I've had to learn that. It's been a cool experience. And with the AT, it was awesome. I made some of the best friends of my entire life. It was a formative experience for me.
That's so cool. So yeah, let's talk about cross country skateboarding. You've done quite a bit of it, right? And you've talked about like
Yes.
setting out for challenges and maybe coming up short a couple times. But before we get into that, let's talk about like what is cross country skateboarding? Like,
Sure.
can we explain
Yeah.
that? Like, is it
So
like backpacking? Like, how would you describe it?
yeah. So I think if you talk to Paul Kent, I think that we would not call it cross country skateboarding. I think we would actually call it. There's like so there's through hiking, right? And that's where you take your backpack and you through hike an entire trail. So I think that we're more inclined to call it like through skating or something like that, where you take your backpack and you do an adventure. And there's no follow car. There's nothing like that. Like, and that's what I do. I've never done a car assisted kind of adventure or anything. So I'm a through skater through and through. That's what I am. And when I started, that was not a term, and I'd say it's fairly new because now there's a lot more players in the through skating game, as we watch that longboarding goes through its ebb and flow of growing and shrinking, and so now we're meeting people who are finding that sense of adventure to go through skating. But so when I started, it was 2016. I was in a rough place in life. I found myself kind of backed against the corner of needing money, not having a job, living in California, but I always had this dream in the back of my head that I was going to skateboard across the country. So, I went and I did it. I started out with the goal of, I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna set a world record. I'm gonna skate 100 miles a day. Everybody sucks. I'm the master. And but I was pretty humbled my very first day, and I think that a good way to exemplify this is, my very first day, I left from Bend, Oregon, right after it was one of Conan's races out there.
Oh, the
And
Bend Beatdown.
I think it was the Bend Beatdown.
Yeah, what a
I think
good
it was
one.
the last Bend Beatdown, and it was icy. There's ice out on the road, and there was a news organization doing a story about me, and it was freaking cold, man. It was cold, and I had like a little parade of skaters with me, some great people, and they pushed me off. I went and I skated. It was like as soon as you leave Bend, it's just flat, open. It's a high desert. There's lots of sage. And it was like, oh shit, I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. And I think I made it maybe like 20, 30 miles. And there's a little town called Brothers, Oregon. And all it was this one store. It was a post office, a clothing shop, and a kitchen at the same time. I go in, I'm the only one. And this woman, she's like, oh my God, like I've never met anyone like you. Like this is so cool. And I was like, yeah, but I got to get going. I'm trying to do all these miles. She's like, stop. She's like, stop. She's like, chill, chill, chill. She's like, it's about the people that you meet. It's not about this. She's like, come on. You've never seen this state before. You've never seen this state. You've never done this. You've never done that. She's like, just take it all in. Just take it all in. And, so I did. I slowed down immediately. I threw away all of my goals of going fast and going hard and setting a record. I threw them away within the first 30 miles because I was just like, I just met this amazing person and I kind of had to be open to meeting more people. So that kind of set the stage for the whole 2016 cross country trip. When people would ask me, hey, you need a ride? I'd be like, yeah, sure. Where are we going? I would just jump in people's cars for the story of it. And I really, I learned a lot from doing that. I jumped in so many random people's cars. I stayed at random people's houses all the time. I mean, just so many freaking cool stories that I wouldn't have had. You ever see the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man?
Yeah.
It was a lot like that, where it was like, I had to tell myself, like, don't say no. Just do it. And, I had some weird experiences. I had some kooky experiences, but I had a lot of great experiences meeting all these people. And, so that's what the cross country trip turned into being. It wasn't about the skateboarding anymore. It was about my experience. And I wrote a book about it and I did all that. And, that was very cool.
Right. Do you have any stories that stick out that you could tell now that would be that you have ready on the fly? I don't want to put you on the spot like that. But.
Yeah, I mean, dude, there's a million stories. I tell a lot of them often, but if you've ever taken a look at my book, there's this chapter called "The Ballad of Sir Badger O'Boyle," and so basically, I was cold in Wyoming. I was cold, and I just was not doing well at all. And so I had gotten out of a hitch and just dropped on the side of the road, totally fine. And I'm skating on this highway that I probably shouldn't have been on. And this guy, this beat down pickup truck, pulls over. He's got a white beard, white as snow, white hair. He's got suspenders on. Looked like he was like from a train or something like that. And he careens over, pulls over, comes to a stop. He goes, you look like you need a beer, a shower, and a steak. And I was like, does it have to be in that order? And he's like, nope, come on in. And so I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. And so I jumped in his car. He took me to his trailer park on the side of the highway in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And, so I got in his car. He took me to his trailer and, it's an RV. And he tells me, yeah, I just got out of prison for second-degree murder. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, well, tell me this story. I was like, give me a beer. Tell me this story. And so I'm sitting down with this guy and I'm drinking. He's drinking. We run out of beer. We get in the car and he's drunk. I'm driving to the car with him and I'm like not drunk yet, but we pick up more beer. We get some food and I'm like, oh, shit, this guy's like actually nuts. And, just the way he was acting in public, he takes me back to the place. I get so drunk. We're literally arm in arm, like it was like a movie, arm in arm with each other, singing songs, like these Irish old drinking songs that I had to learn. And we're going over and over. He's telling me stories of his past, and I'm telling him stories of mine. And he's like, oh, I never met someone like you before. And it was just so crazy. I woke up the next day and it was a storm, like a real storm. And he was like, oh, I guess you have to stay again. It's like, oh shit, I guess I do. And, so I basically spent the whole day trying to like navigate this new relationship with this strange man. And the next day he was like, well, you can stay again. I was like, no, dude, I've got to go. And I left right from the trailer park and I left out of there. But, he was a murderer. He wasn't a murderer. He was in the same room as someone who was murdered. I don't know the whole story, but
sounds like you heard the story.
It was sketchy. And it was funny, but there was a lot of experiences like that. And I wouldn't have had them had I just been skating with my head down the whole time.
Sure. Yeah. I love how your response to him telling you he was just released for second degree murder was, all right, hand me a beer. Tell me the story.
Yeah.
Gone this far. Like, you
Yeah.
got me in your
Yeah.
trailer park. I might as well stay.
I think I'm pretty situationally oblivious. I think that I would do pretty poorly traveling in like a foreign country. Because someone would be like, "Oh, come down this alleyway. We have cool wares for you to check out." I'd be like, "Oh, great! I'm also holding out $1,000 in cash." Like I'm just that kind of person. And I don't know if it's being too trusting or just being too stupid, but it's ended me up in situations like that.
Well, I mean, that's a great story to have, honestly. Like, and it goes to show that, like, even someone who was arrested for something like that isn't a bad, like, maybe not a bad person, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know
I
the
mean,
story, and they helped you out, right? So, like,
yeah, I'm the last person to give the American judicial system any sort of commendation or any kind of like praise.
mhm.
So when I hear, oh, I was put in jail for second degree murder, I'm like, yeah, I bet the judicial system was wrong, and you weren't even doing it. My first thought is screw the government.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, it's the
Exactly.
government's
Yeah,
fault.
everyone gets the benefit of the doubt in my eyes.
That's hilarious. But yeah, that cross country trip, is a big deal. It sounds like you again would set out with expectations and like immediately learned that maybe you were wrong about a couple of things, and then had
Yeah.
this adventure you didn't expect to have, right?
Right. Yeah. And it was an ordeal. It was I had to plan like extensively. Like and I had to be able to adjust on the fly extensively because my initial goal was to follow sort of the Trans-America route, right, which is a cycling route that goes across the country. Some of it is gravel, some of it is off-road. So and some of it just goes over massive mountains, so you can't really skate it 100%. But my goal was to kind of dance around it, and but I had to adjust on the fly because I was going through the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, and it was like, oh shit. It's the winter. I probably can't go through that way. So I had to make all these adjustments and go through Idaho Falls and kind of dance around the Tetons and stuff like that. And so being able to make the route, skate, and be situationally aware of the map and where you are on the map was a skill that I had to pick up along the way. Because also keep in mind when I had done this cross country skate, I had never even slept outside in a tent by myself before. I had never even gone really camping before. I had never even the most I'd done is an out and back skate across every state line. So I had this big hunkin' backpack on my back with way too many things. And I was just out there. I was just doing it. I just thrust myself into the middle of it. And, so I had to learn a lot of lessons along the way.
Mm-hmm. You said you had way too many things in your bag. What were some things that you wouldn't recommend people bring or that you brought that were not necessary, not useful?
Yeah, well, so I had two water filtration systems. Both of them failed on me due to my own incompetence or whatever. I also had like a big thick sweatshirt that I didn't need. I had like a 40-ounce hydro flask. I mean, just those things alone, that's like 3 pounds. And every pound adds up. And you know, I also carried makeup with me at the time. I was really trying to assert my gender affirmations or whatever. I carried and I didn't carry food, so I like forewent all of my cooking gear, which I ditched on the first day. And I said, oh, I'm just going to eat at restaurants all along the way, and so I carried just a lot of crap. I had a 0-degree sleeping bag that was like 4 pounds. My tent was just some Amazon tent that was like maybe 2 pounds. I think my base weight was probably about 25 pounds. So with water, I was skating cross country with a 35-pound backpack on. So then you can kind of begin to see, how this takes shape. My back was heavy. My legs were tough to lift. And of course, I only skate with one leg. So, I was beating up my knee, and it was like somebody comes along with a car and says, hey, want me to get you over the mountain? I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that break. Why not?
At that point, it's just the adventure.
Yeah, exactly. So, then when you come to, 10 years later and I'm doing the Appalachian Trail, my base weight was 6 pounds. I basically walked around with like a drawstring backpack on the whole time. I mean, you met me in Maine when I was doing my other skate, and, my bag was tiny,
It was very
and
small, yeah.
yeah, so I had to like learning how to be ultra light, adjusted it. And that kind of led me to, all the education that I had to attempt later cross country skates.
So what was in your newest bag, or like your AT bag?
Yeah, so in my AT bag, I had my tent, and my tent is only 1 pound. I had my sleeping bag, which weighs half a pound. Well, it's a quilt. It's a down quilt, whatever. I had a water filter. Then I had, just some food and snacks, and then I didn't even have a headlight. I mean, I really had the base level of everything.
You didn't
Like
even have a headlamp. That's
yeah,
crazy.
no headlamp because I have the Garmin Fenix 7X Sapphire Solar watch, whatever, and it actually has a flashlight on the wrist. So I was like,
Oh.
boom, no need for a headlight. Of course, I was wrong about that. I would definitely not recommend getting rid of your headlight, but I didn't have a headlight. Um, but yeah, the bulk of what I carried was food, and I think that that's the way to do it. A 6 pound base weight is pretty serious.
Hmm. What did you bring for food?
So on the cross country skate, on the first cross country skate, I ditched all of my food gear on day one. I just ate at restaurant to restaurant. On the Appalachian Trail, as I did it, I would carry 4 days of food. I would start out every day with a jumbo honey bun, which is 480 calories. Then I would have a protein bar for like kind of like a brunch, kind of like at 11, and then I wouldn't eat lunch, and then I would eat some nuts or stuff along the way. And then when I got to camp, I would just eat tuna and tortillas, and that was my meal every
Oh.
day for about 6 months. And so I kind of I started getting really into the cost per calorie kind of camp. I don't know if that's a community or anything, but doing calculations. How can I spend the least amount of money to get the most calories? And so as you walk around the grocery store, I'm just walking around with the calculator, doing all this math, writing it down. And so the goal of a day of hiking is to get somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 calories per day, right? Because you're going to burn just about that many hiking, anyways. So the goal was to get 2,000 to 3,000 calories. So everything that I did came down to counting calories, counting the cost per calorie, and making sure that my food didn't weigh a ton. So,
Hmm.
you need calorie dense foods that are really light. And then, spending the least amount of money so that you can continue hiking for the longest way. And then as soon as I finished the AT and I went into the next cross country skateboarding trip, I only carried breakfast, and then I would eat at restaurants along the way.
Okay. And you obviously can't eat at restaurants on the AT because you're in the woods most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So, the AT has this reputation of being easy only because you're you're never really out of reach of some kind of small town. But, these small towns, they make terrible food. And it's an effort to get off the trail, hitchhike into town, eat, and then get back. So, every once in a while there's like a big town that you like walk through, like Damascus, Virginia. The trail goes straight through the town. So like there's like a subway on the trail,
Oh, cool.
So sometimes that would happen, but for the most part, you just try and avoid going into town because it was just such a logistic hell.
Yeah, that sounds brutal. Like I've seen some of the trailheads that are along the AT,
Mhm.
and it's like a nice parking lot or whatever. And sometimes there's like people there setting up to like with like a booth of like snacks or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah. They call that trail magic.
Trail
So that
magic.
was that was something I learned. So trail magic when you're hiking is when just some kind soul, someone who's probably done the AT in the past, or they see hikers and they just want to help out. A lot of church groups, just kind of just good people out there. They set up booths and they just give away free stuff, and it's
Ah,
like It's like, wow, like sometimes you just come out of a trailhead, it's a miserable hot day, and then someone could be sitting there with Mountain Dew cans and, whatever, like slices of cake, and you're just like, holy shit, like this is the best thing ever. And so we call that trail magic. So thinking back to, my first cross country skate, trail magic was the form of people just driving by and be like, you look like you need something. Can I give it to you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And, so then, we'll get into my my latest cross country adventure, but trail magic was not allowed. So that was one big thing about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You were talking about doing it more like an FKT.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess anything else on sort of this east to west trip you did where, you set out to skate the whole thing. You said you've never skated with a support car. However, you were open to taking a ride somewhere just because, like, who cares, right? You're just on an adventure.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I don't like to, it's all semantics really, but, I don't say, oh, I skateboarded across the country when I did that east to west trip. I had a skate adventure across the country.
Right.
Like I said, it's just semantics. It doesn't matter. But, to be fair, I did not skate every fabulous mile, so that was kind of the motivation for me to, do more adventures and do every fabulous mile in other trips. When I cycled across the country in 2018, that was an every fabulous mile bicycle trip. My Florida rides have been every fabulous mile skateboarding up and down the state of Florida. The Appalachian Trail, I hiked every single mile. And so that was kind of, I did the adventure thing, and then I really wanted to get serious with other trips.
Yeah. And I guess to be fair, right, some of the adventures you've had, getting a ride somewhere, it sounds like that was just as ballsy as skating at times, right? Like
Sure,
being able to like
yeah.
accept people's help, like it's actually like not something everyone's open to do, not just because they have their head down on their thing. They might be afraid to like interact with strangers, and like I think that's part of the culture in today's world where like we are very closed off. We don't really interact with, I don't even know my neighbors, like.
Right,
which
right.
is weird.
Well, think about this, so that was 8 years ago, right? That was 8 years ago when I began that trip. And 8 years ago, was a very contentious time in American politics.
That's
So I'm
true.
I'm a young transgender individual that just putting makeup on and looking like an absolute fairy skateboarding across the country. And people in these random red voting, particularly right wing states, they're stopping, picking me up, and having the time of their life. Meeting with me. We every single person I met we walked away with good experiences. But I would agree with you that it was kind of ballsy for me to just start jumping into cars and stuff. And what was going on in the world at that time? There was massive wildfires. I wrote all this in my book, which is why I remember. But there's massive wildfires all around the country. There was Donald Trump becoming president. There was a huge gun debate. And so I ended up in these political contemporary event discussions with lots and lots and lots of people all along the way. And I kind of I found that to be sort of a defining trait of the whole trip was, the politics of people and all of that. And I learned quite a lot. I learned to open up my mind to how they see things. It's kind of like, why would someone think the earth is flat? Well, probably because they live in Nebraska. Because it's fucking flat.
It makes sense when you look outside in Nebraska.
yeah. But that was kind of ballsy. And so that it made it its own adventure. But probably not something I would do now that I'm 32 years old. I don't know if I would, jump into every car now. But on the AT, I jumped into a lot of random cars.
That's wild.
To get into town and stuff, yeah.
That was 8 years ago. Like, that feels like such a long time, 8 years. But I remember you going on the adventure. Like, I remember 2016.
2016 feels like yesterday, man.
Yeah. Yeah. COVID took so many years out of it. It wasn't even COVID. It was just time. Time's been moving quicker lately,
I agree with you.
But yeah, I want to make sure, is your book still available? Can we plug it? Is it?
It's not still available currently, but going through my own life things. But I'm going to make a website eventually, and the book will be free when I get it back up. If you want a copy of it, I could totally just email it to you. Just reach out to me on Instagram or something,
Cool.
and I'll totally just send it to you in a Google Drive link if you want to check it out. Yeah, I raised money to print that book. I think I raised like $1,800 to print that book. I printed 100 copies. Everybody got a signed copy who did it, and then I think I had maybe like 20 copies left, and they've just been given out over the years. Because I published that in 2019, which was 6 years ago. Yeah, whatever. I'm not very good at math apparently, but yeah. So I gave those out. So there's not physical copies left, but if you want to check it out, you want to read the book, there is digital copies.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, let's talk about the latest trip you went on though. You kind of went north to south this time. You started at the very edge of the Maine-Canada border, right along the coast though. So like not the very tip of Maine for those wondering or who know geography. So you basically followed the coast down all through Maine and then continued on. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big thing for me when I was hiking the AT was what's next. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have, very good relationship with my family, didn't really have anywhere to go after finishing the ATs. And as I started getting towards, Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Vermont, I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because this trip is ending. What's coming next for me? And I kind of made the decision that I was going to skateboard from the Canadian border down to Key West and do a real full skate cross country. And there was a lot of motivation for that, and I think that being exposed to the hiking community really kind of solidified my interest in doing it, because the hiking community has something called an FKT, the fastest known time, and these are people who are they're crazy people, they're absolute madmen and mad women, whatever. But they, these people they set out with just their backpacks and they'll do 50, 60 miles a day hiking on the Appalachian Trail and finish the trail in 2 months, something that took me 6 months, and I was just inspired. I was just blown away. And, so I was like, well, how can we take those rules of the FKT and how can we apply them to skateboarding? Because I think that distance skateboarding has a record keeping problem. And I think that, we as a community need to, because going back to where we were talking about main characters and, people who pop up out of nowhere and they're just like, I'm going to break the record, or I'm going to skateboard across the country and I'm going to be the first, disabled woman with 3 fingers that's going to skateboard across the country, whatever, any specialized group that anyone can find, I'm going to be the first of this type of person to do it, great, good for you. But also, how can we say it's a record if we don't have any standardized rules that can be repeated? How can we say that you skateboarded across the country the fastest if the route that you did isn't even a route? How can we do it if you didn't post all of your times of going over and over? If it's not recorded and nobody can repeat it, is it really a record? So
that's a good question.
So this kind of dug into my head a lot as I was skating or as I was hiking. And because the FKTs are very, very, laid in rules, so to do a self-supported FKT, you can't even have friends rooting for you at a trailhead. That's considered moral support. You can't have any support of any kind. There was a girl who hiked and she started with her friend. They were supposed to do they were both supposed to get the record, but one of the friends got injured along the way, so the other friend continued on and finished the hike. But she didn't get the self-supported record. She got a supported record because she had that moral support for half of her hike with her friend. And so they're very serious about these rules, and they take it very seriously, and it really helps with record keeping. So when someone says, I just did the Appalachian Trail in 50 days, and they have a GPX record for everyone to go over. We know it's not spoofed. They have, pictures and videos along the way that says, hey, we're actively doing it. And then they have their times and they have all the rules that were met because people were watching them and tracking them. Then we can legitimately go, congratulations, you did it. But in the distance skateboarding community, what do we have? We have Ultra Skate really as our only true record kept event. We have marathons, but the Gray's Lake in Des Moines, Iowa is going to be extremely different from the marathon in San Diego. Adrenalina. They're two completely different routes, even though they're both marathons. And someone could tell you, oh, the ups and downs don't matter because they even out at the end, but still it makes for a different race. So, are you going to consider a marathon race the same in every single location, or do we have just one marathon race? So for me, during the hiking, I was thinking about this a lot. And so 3 days after finishing the Appalachian Trail, I descended from Katahdin, hitchhiked into town, stayed at the hotel. 3 days later, I was at the Canadian border, ready to skate. I had 2 watches on my hand. One was going to track the entire skate, and then the other watch was going to track my daily skates. And then I had Paul Kent and I had Lena from Melanin CAC, and they were both looking in at my, how I was doing every day to make sure that I was being honest about this. So I wanted to track every hour, every mile beautifully so that somebody could come along. So even if I wasn't the fastest, or even if it wasn't whatever, I was building a route that could be redone. And that's the dream for me is, same thing with like the relay skate across the country, that Jack and Andy and Miles, Rick and Paul did, great skate, absolutely amazing. But, I still hold a little bit of issue with the record keeping in general. I just think that, we don't, as a distance skateboarding community, I don't think that we have the tools or the hub available that's keeping track of all this stuff. So we take it all the way around, the name thru-skating, right? It's an awesome adventure. It's something very, very cool that we want to inspire a lot of people to do. And, as a community, we now need routes that these people can do. So I set out, that was my goal. My goal was to set out to create an imitable route that people could do to set records on that went completely across the country from the tip of Canada to the end of Key West. So that was my goal. And I failed at my goal. So I started in Canada, and over the course of 11 days, I made it to New York. So I skated all of New England. I did 620 or 30 miles. And I did it in about 240 hours. It's all tracked, it's all out there, but the goal was to go all the way down to Key West. But so I didn't make it, but I learned a lot in the process about record keeping, and I learned a lot in the process about, what I wanted for, the genre of thru skating, because that's where my roots are. My roots are in skateboarding across state lines, skateboarding across the country. I've skateboarded up and down the state of Florida 3 times. So it interests me to want to kind of take helm of this and create, to set an example. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to set an example. I want to do more of that.
Yeah. I think it was quite the undertaking of you to do that, right? And the logistics alone of having 2 watches sounds like a pain. Like, what happens if you accidentally stop the one that's not supposed to stop the whole time? That would suck. And
yeah.
So I commend you for attempting, and 600 miles in 10 days is crazy. You said 240 hours. You said 11 days, but 240 hours is more like 10 days. That's a wild pace.
Some fast math. Yeah, it was about, I think the 11th day I did 5 miles and I quit.
Right.
So, but yeah, I was keeping a great pace. My goal was to do 55 to 80 miles a day, which was ambitious, but I was also feeling like I was in my physical prime. I had just finished the AT, literally 3 days before. And, I was into it. I was feeling pretty hot. And, but yeah, 55 to 80 miles a day is not easy.
No,
not easy at all.
Not at all. I can barely do an 80-mile skate on the weekend, that's brutal. I'm out for at least that night. I can't do anything. Right. And I saw you after a 60, 70 mile day or something. And, we made pizza, yeah. We had drank some beer, and we just kind of hung out, and you seemed fine. You were obviously tired, but
yeah.
It
wasn't even that I was tired.
I
think it was more that I was anticipating the next day. That was kind of always what it was. It was never that I was tired. It was that I was always dreading the next day.
Yeah. How could you not, though? I don't know, 50-mile days. That's so crazy. Every day, day in,
Yeah.
day out, just slogging away.
Yeah. And, Maine, where I started in the town of Calleigh, Maine, which is, it's the only reason I started in Calais, Maine, was because that's where the East Coast Greenway begins. So the rules of an FKT are that it needs to be a popular route. So you can't just make up a route and be like, oh, I just walked on the road for 20 miles. Do that.
FKT.
So yeah, right. FKT of walking down Highway 9, whatever. So so for me to make a popular route in skateboarding was to make use of the East Coast Greenway, and so that was what I did. So, and that begins in Calais and ends in Key West. So leaving from Calais was just it was amazing. The pavement was pristine. It was like beautiful, and then there's these rolling hills, and the landscape was great. And then when I ran into you, I was coming into the end of Maine. Because you're sort of close to the New Hampshire
Yeah,
border
very
over there.
close. Yeah.
And so I was coming off of this high of of beautiful pavement, an amazing and rewarding skate. I was doing, I was keeping a excellent pace and all that stuff. And then it was like, as soon as I left and I got into Massachusetts, it was like, oh, have you ever seen bad pavement before? And then it was like, then I got into Rhode Island and it was like, wow, everything is a trail and it's beautiful again. And then it was like, and Connecticut says, go F yourself.
Right.
Connecticut was like a beat down for me. And, yeah, but I still kept my pace. Like I had my goals. I was really, really motivated for that.
So the pavement changed by state, which is, I guess you might expect, but like, why do you think that is? Do you think the state like just doesn't care, or was it more of like the route you took in each state was different, and like they just didn't have the trails?
Yeah, well, I mean, different governments have different rules about what to do with the roads, obviously. But so the route in Maine, that's the East Coast Greenway's bread and butter. So they routed that to be on perfect pavement the whole time.
Okay.
They chose the roads. Massachusetts, so then when you get into New Hampshire is just like riding on glass. There's a beach to your left. Everything's amazing, and it's like, but you're only in New Hampshire for 15 miles, and then Massachusetts is like, all right, you got to do some work, because the bread and butter of Massachusetts is getting into Boston and kind of tiptoeing along that way so that you can get to Rhode Island. And Massachusetts just gets destroyed. It's on open roads. Then you get into Boston and there's like a crosswalk every 50 feet, and it just became a logistic hell. Stoplight go, and you're in the city for the first time, and it was just kind of like tough. And then Connecticut's the first state. So it's the East Coast Greenway, but Connecticut's the only state where the East Coast Greenway does not hug the coast. And in my routing, I wanted to keep with the East Coast Greenway, so I followed it. But what I wish I did was actually just keep going on the coast, because coasts have better pavement, because you have tourism dollars that go to waterfronts, and if you go more inland, you're going to find rural towns that probably don't really give too many shits about the pavement quality. And that was something that you could just kind of witness as you start heading more south. And so Connecticut was hills, rolling hills, just some terrible, terrible areas. And then I spent the whole time wishing that I was just on the coast. And, when it finally came to the end, it was like, yep, I just got my ass handed to me.
Way back in the day in high school, I read Bill Bryson's Into the Woods, or whatever, Walk in the Woods, whatever it's called, where he does the Appalachian Trail. And the one thing that stuck out to me was how he says, he'd go back into the city or like some sort of built up area where there's a bunch of Walmarts or something, right? And it would like make him sick because he had been in the woods for so long. He got used to that, and like seeing this like metropolis, whatever he saw would be like, oh, that's gross, So I'm wondering, did you have any moments like that after being on the AT and then doing this skate? You finally get to like Boston, right? Was it ever just like, fuck this? Like, why does this even exist? Like, do you ever have any moments like that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, keep in mind, I live in a van now.
Yeah.
Like I did not readjust into society very well. One thing is that everybody smells. Everybody stinks. They all smell like detergent and perfumes all the time. It's like this horrifying thing. Like just walking along the trail, and then all of a sudden I could smell you from like 50 feet away, 100 feet away. I could smell you, and your putrid stink of Tide and bleach and lavender, whatever the hell you put in your washing machine. It smells terrible, and it's so strong. And you come into a town and you just get overwhelmed by that. And that was like the biggest thing. Going through Maine on the skate, I came into Portland, Maine, and that was like kind of a deviation for me. So I went into Portland, Maine, and I sat at this Asian restaurant, and I'm looking around. There's like people wearing turtlenecks. There's people with their thick-rimmed reading glasses on, and they're all cozy, drinking a coffee, having themselves some ramen, maybe a beer with brunch, whatever. And I'm just like, man, you all suck. Like, what are you doing with yourselves? I'm working over here. It was like, this crazy experience of just being like, I don't understand you people. I just really don't. And other times you come into a town, something notable sticks out to me is the town of Marion, Virginia. That place is a rotting hellhole. It was weird, because on the trail, everybody's beautiful on the trail. Everybody's working. They're glowing from sweat, and everybody's working tough, and everybody's happy with all the endorphins that they make. And then you come into the town of Marion, Virginia, and it just smells like it's rotting from the inside, right? It's like you go into a Walmart. And the people that they're veterans walking with limps, and they have poor health care, and then you meet stray cats, and you're just like how does society end up like this, to where like the sick aren't getting healed, the infrastructure is not allowing is creating a home for stray animals, and every single storefront was closed. There's like 6 storefronts in a row that were just closed. And it's like, obviously this town is failing. And, you start to see the societal collapse that's happening in these rural, middle of nowhere towns. Just people who are beaten down on their luck. They don't really have a say in what's going on in their life. The economy's beating them to shit. And then they sit and they rot and they fester in all of this. And it emanates from the town, and both visually and in smells. But so like you come in and you just see all that and you hear it, and it's like a really disappointing experience. But I think that what Bill Bryson was kind of saying was like along those lines, is just what a jarring thing to take in as you're coming out of the woods, which are always beautiful,
Yeah, you go from these natural, like eternally you're in this world that just looks nice. It looks normal, right? Because it's just trees and growth and nice trails. Or maybe not nice trails, but like good enough trails. And like the people you meet are just like you, right? You're in the same sort of mindset, right? And like, I do think it's funny that you said people smells when you come down, right? Because like, you know, I've walked by some thru hikers before, and I've been like, like.
I've had to learn how to put deodorant on because I didn't wear deodorant from March until November.
But it does make you wonder, right? Like, how natural is it? I mean, people might question it, but how natural is it to wear deodorant? Like,
oh, it's not natural at all. I'm the number one proponent against deodorant, but some people think I smell offensive. So, I put it on
but that's just it. Like, offensive, like, is an ambiguous thing, right? It's subjective to the person who's offended. It's not like, can a smell actually be offensive? Because you were describing perfumes and lavender as being offensive, which might
an
not
affront to my nostrils.
But yeah, I mean, smells are a funny thing. Like, I guess it just depends on the person. But I like that perspective you gave of like, your smells are offensive too, like not you, right. You saying that to like other people who like really feel the need to smell a certain way. And
right. And you can always kind of pick out the couples. So the guy who's trying to impress the girl, they're walking in the woods. Guy's probably never walked before in his life. There's one of these guys for every 10 miles. There's one of these guys walking with a girl. He doesn't look like he belongs, and and he stinks. He stinks like he washed his clothes. He put on his cologne, and he was like, "I'm gonna date that girl." And there's one every 10 miles, a couple. And it's like the first date syndrome.
Uh-huh.
And luckily they're freaking outside, because
Yeah.
if they were out at a dinner, there's no way she wouldn't smell them. It's like how I don't know. I just think people just use too much. They use too many things too much in general. I think that being an adventurer in the way that I have has kind of led me to be as minimalist as possible. So in terms of smells and like cleaning stuff, like I shower. Of course I shower. Guys, trust me, I shower.
Yeah.
But like I have to I take it in a very different way. Some people shower every day, and I think that's nuts. There's women who like shampoo and condition their hair every single day. That's crazy. That's crazy. People just think that they need things that they don't. Deodorant, shampoo, it's all soap. It's all soap. Whether it's body wash or a bar of soap or it's shampoo or it's conditioner, it's all freaking soap. Just put soap in your hair. Put soap on your body, clean it off, be done with it. You don't need all these smells and all these things. Like, if someone's getting close enough to you to where you need to impress them with your smells, maybe you should work on yourself first.
Work on your personality a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So towards the end of my Appalachian Trail hike, right, I had split from the people that I was hiking with for pretty much like 4/5 of the entire trail. And so I was completely alone for the last like 500 miles of trail. And I had my super light backpack, but I was like, I would hike all day, and then the sun was setting sooner, so I would have more time at camp at nighttime. And so I was like, man, I really got to occupy my time. And I didn't have any luxury items or anything. My luxury item was my phone. I had the bare bones, only what I needed and nothing more. And so I actually ordered myself like a video game controller so that I could play video games on my phone with my controller. And I had and then I started kind of building up pure luxuries. And sometimes it's okay to have a luxury, in those instances. But then there's people who are like, I can't get up and hike without a cup of coffee. And it's like, sir, that's called drug addiction, and
So many coffee drinkers just heard that and they're like, I can't do my day without coffee.
Yeah. And, luxuries that people have, they vary in a lot of different ways, but, you got to kind of find your middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you touched on something that's separate from, skateboarding and not, but like the whole caffeine addiction thing is real.
And, Starbucks is a glorified drug dealer. And, but at the same time, people will smoke cigarettes, do vaping, and then they'll have a coffee, all legal drugs, nicotine and caffeine, they're legal drugs, and they need them. They absolutely need them. And, I never drank coffee until I skateboarded across the country the first time. And I will never forget it. I was in just some small town in Oregon, and they were like, oh, here's how you use the coffee maker. And I was like, I don't really need coffee, but they made the coffee in front of me. So I was like, well, I'm not going to let this coffee go to waste, because they just made me some coffee right in my room, right in front of my face. So I drank it. And then I kind of had to learn, coffee, kind of like tea in other countries, is portrayed in movies. I've never been really to any other country, but the way that tea is portrayed, you walk in the door, oh, would you like some tea? I kind of learned that coffee was this way that even if you're not in it for the drug, it's this social experience, kind of the same way that weed is this social experience.
Mm-hmm.
The AT is a lot of the same, with people who once they learn that making coffee every single day is a freaking hassle, going into town for a coffee is like this big, luxurious deal. And, okay, we'll go get your coffee, you little drug addict, it's fine. And, so we kind of do these things. Uh, but it's a very social thing that I had to learn to adjust to.
Right. I think you kind of made me think of something as you were saying that, where you're talking about being like the movie Yes Man, where he says yes to everything. That's like the whole premise of the movie. And you were kind of embodied that when you're on your trip. People ask you if you need help. Yeah, sure. I'll hop in your car and take me away.
Yeah.
Murderer or whatever. But like, what do you think about saying no? Like, sometimes you kind of have a vision and someone comes along. Like for me, if someone made me coffee, I'd be like, I'm not drinking that shit. Like, I don't want it. So no, thank you. And
Yeah.
like, I don't like, I've definitely learned the value of saying no. People who know me know how stubborn I can be. So maybe I'm more need to learn the value of the yes part. But like, what do you think about like just being like, no, like I'm actually like, have you experienced any of that like on your adventures and stuff?
Oh, of course. I mean, saying no is setting boundaries for yourself. Setting boundaries for yourself is very, very good. Take the drug out of the context. Hey, can you work on this website for me? No, I can't. I'm busy. Where in the past I'd be like, yes, anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you have to learn how to say yes and no, like for yourself.
Right.
So saying no. So like when I was on my last skate trip where I went from Canada to New York, I was very much in this mode where I just wanted to be left alone. I did not want to talk to people. I was on a mission. I did not care about meeting people. I didn't care about anything. People would ask me what I'm doing. Shut up. Don't talk to me. Like, hey, that's an awesome skateboard. Yeah, great. Go fuck yourself. Like that was kind of like my attitude about all of it. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to and there was a lot of people. The East Coast Greenway goes through every major city on the East Coast. So I kind of had to come to this, people are texting me and messaging me the whole time as I'm doing it. And they're saying, hey, you can come to my place, or can I meet up with you? Can I bring you anything? And I had to say, no, 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 no. Like, leave me the alone.
Right.
Like, I don't want to. And, cause I was in a dark place. I was in my own headspace, and I didn't want to have to engage with all these people all the time and have that coffee situation. So for me it was healthy to say no in those instances, but because I've said yes, I think that for newer people coming on to these new life experiences, I'm 32, I'm kind of realizing there's some people that I just don't want to engage with anymore. But for maybe somebody younger who's setting out into the world and trying to see what's up with people, you should probably say yes more. But you got to figure it out for yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So we're talking about FKTs, right? So back to that sort of whole thing where it's like you set out to do this thing. You're north to south, starting in Maine, going down. You set out to set this standard for the FKT. And you just mentioned a bunch of people are hitting you up. They're talking to you. They're asking if you need help, asking you if they can ride with you. But the whole nature of what you're doing is to ignore them, right? Like based on the standard that's been set by the hiking FKT is you can't respond to any of these, right? And
right.
The way you were being monitored by like Paul and Lena was they were just looking at your stats, right? They weren't actually talking to you.
Right. They were not talking to me. Me and Paul talked at length about what makes an FKT for skateboarding. But yeah, there was really no discussion. And, one big piece of that was the whole moral support thing that I brought up earlier. Like, is it moral support if someone goes along your route and then cheers you on? Yes, but that's only because in the woods you're really, really isolated. Like you're like on the AT, like if somebody's in the middle of the woods coming to cheer you on, they did that. That's very clearly coming to support you. But on the East Coast Greenway with skateboarding, like I said, you're going through every single major city. You're on main roads the whole time. There's guaranteed to be somebody who's pulling up in a car and says, hey, do you need some water? And, if I said, oh, no, thank you, that's fine. But if I said, yeah, is that did they support me because I didn't plan it? It's not my
Hmm.
fault, right? They forced me in one way or another to take that support. So there are some things between hiking FKTs and skateboarding FKTs, which we're calling F skate Ts now. There are some rules that need to be adjusted. And me and Paul had talked about this at length.
I think that's really interesting. The whole, like, I definitely have some contention with the whole moral support ruins the FKT, even for hiking. It doesn't really
Yes.
make sense to me because you're saying someone can't walk out there and support you, but if you don't know they're doing it and they do it anyway. But what about trail
Right.
magic too, where there's someone just on a booth cheering you on that's already there? He's going to be there no matter what.
Gotta walk right by him.
Well, you
Say
walked
no,
by him,
thank
but
you.
they still cheered you on. So is that not moral support? Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, now you see the issue.
Right, and like there's that seems like a huge issue to me, where it's like splitting hairs for no reason. Where it's like moral support can also be bad. Like if someone's cheering you on, that might not help you at all. Like, it's so subjective. Yeah. And like, did the trees give you moral support? Like, what if someone talks to trees?
Right. Well, I could actually think of when I was going through Massachusetts, I'm from Massachusetts. I have a ton of friends in Massachusetts, and I had just been hiking for 6 months, and then I jumped into this skateboarding adventure immediately. I hadn't seen my friends in almost a year, and so I was like, as I was going through Massachusetts, I was like, I'm literally my old house that I grew up in is on the East Coast Greenway. So I was like, am I really not going to go see my mom? I haven't seen her in a year. Am I really not going to go see my friends? And so, we kind of ruled. I mean, there's no organization to any of this, and there's no written rules put out there. But in the effort of trying to create this F skate T that I want to, we're making up things on the fly. But I just said I don't even care if it's moral support, because I think that because I'm in your camp. I don't know if the moral support clause is going to really affect the outcome of the whole thing. And plus, how are we going to keep people entirely honest about that? And so it's a waste of everybody's effort, when really we should be rooting people on and encouraging them to do great things. So, I mean, like on the long trail, right? So the FKT for the long trail, which is a however many miles, like 300 something miles, that goes really remote through Vermont from Massachusetts border to Canada. And somebody did an FKT in 4 days going from Canada to Massachusetts. Crazy. This guy was
That's nuts.
Absolutely insane. And he said that he constantly had to turn down trail magic along the way. And like the trail for me, as I did that one, had a ton of cell service the whole way. Is getting an Instagram message that says, go you can do it. Is that not the same?
Yeah.
What if I just jumped on a video call with someone? Mm-hmm. Is that not the same? So I just think it's kind of a useless distinction, but it does exist. So in the creation of FSKTs going forward, we're going to have to look at these rules on a different basis, especially because on a skateboard, you're on a road. You're guaranteed to run into restaurants and
someone's going to say
something
to you. Like there's no way around that.
Right, exactly.
That's really cool, though. F Skate T is the name of this sort of thing you and Paul are working on.
Right. So it's kind of like my dream baby as I was creating it.
And you have sort of plans probably after this big journey you're going on next, and maybe to like get a website going or something.
Yeah. So I would like to kind of take the helm of this, F skate T kind of ordeal, because distance skateboarding has been around for years and years and years, but we don't have anywhere that has all of these records. So, talking about what makes an F skate T, this is how organizations get born. This is how, the sport grows by, creating standardized results. So like with the ultra skate, right? Like before, it was James Peters going out on Alki Beach and just freaking skating. There was no rules created. Everything was just up to him to uphold these rules and tell people that this is what he did. And then going into what ultra skate is now, I mean, we're on a freaking NASCAR speedway with lap trackers, and you're essentially in an oval cage. You can't deviate from the route. You can't lie about it. And I think that's wonderful. So now when someone else pops up and they say, "Oh, I'm going to do an ultra skate," it's like, well, unless you hold yourself to the same standards that we've created over all of these years, it's not going to count because it shouldn't, right? So, like, when I set out to do this first skateboard across the country, I was just choosing routes on the fly. I was just making shit up as I went along. And, you can't have that because if a record is going to be broken, it has to be exactly the same. Things have to be the same. They have to agree with the same rules. So that's where the basis of all this comes from is if we're going to grow the sport, if we're going to grow distance skateboarding, we need to have healthy competition that agrees with each other. And that's all I want to create. That's all that I want to put out into the world. So with this last skate that I attempted to go cross country, it was going to be the longest route. I think it was going to be somewhere around 2,800 miles. And it was going to be on a popular route. And it was going to set a very clear basis. So it didn't matter how fast I went. No matter what, it would have been the fastest time across the country. And someone else would have had my full GPX route and all of the data that proves that I did it. So they could really go ahead and take that on and challenge it themselves.
Right. Having it be repeatable, as you were saying before, seems like the most important part. Record it down.
Absolutely.
And have it a map for someone else to follow so they can beat you. Otherwise, there's no point.
Exactly.
You just run on, otherwise you just run on an adventure. There's still a point, right? And even like if you're going to do your own ultra skate, there's still tons of value to that. And you will be, I don't know what the word, not praised, right? But like you will be recognized for what you've done. It's just not the same as Miami. And now we have two other ultra skates, right? That we've had Dutch for a while, and like I think it's coming back maybe this year, maybe next year. But then there's the UK, the London, the one near London. Which seems pretty legit, but it's also a different course.
Right. And both of those races agreed with the IDSA on their rulings and their specific standards that they have to be held up to. And that's important, so, even though the tracks are ever so slightly different in their own ways, you're still competing for the record. You're still on that route. And, it's the same thing with setting an FKT on the Appalachian Trail. The route exists, but there's also thousands of people every year that just, like me, just do it. I wasn't going out there to set a record, to do anything. I was just doing the trail. So if I create this route for skateboarding across the country, then someone else can come along and be like, oh, I'm just doing Callie's route and I'm just having fun, and that's great. That's perfect. Because now I've set out a route that's as safe as it can be as far as open road skating goes. And it's, and B, they're on something that kind of has a status.
I think, even though you didn't finish your north-south thing, the main portion you did is valid to me. And like, I'm going to look at that and think, oh, that could be a route. Like you and I even talked, like maybe we could do the main section as its own event where it was like this big through skate, right? Where, not as long as what you were setting up, but what was it, like 200, 300 miles? Wasn't it something like that? Or no, it wasn't that far.
To Maine to New Hampshire, how many miles was that? It was like 400.
Was it really?
It was a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a lot. And then the last half that I did was New Hampshire to New York. Yeah, because I only did about 600 miles. Yeah, Maine was the hugest portion of it.
Wow.
So like doing a Maine section, doing a Massachusetts section. And so that's also what I tracked. I tracked what was my time to the Maine border. What was my time in New Hampshire? So these are existing records. So, I do agree that I created something. I did the New England section, like I've built the New England section of the first cross-country skateboarding route, like it's pretty cool. And at the same time, I also did 1,000 kilometers. So, did I did I somehow unwittingly create a 1,000 kilometer skateboard record that someone can come along and just sweep, like has anyone tracked this stuff before? Because when you track in the way that I tracked, you create what we're talking about with imitable routes.
Yeah, that'd be so cool to have them like in one central location, and people can kind of advertise their own, or like at least advertise creating their own, right? And like figuring out what they need to do to get it legit.
Right. And even doing this route, I mean, I think I texted you somewhere along the way. I was like, yo, there's a sweet 5-mile loop that we could possibly host a route, like a race on.
Yeah.
And I kept finding these amazing, like in Rhode Island. Rhode Island was the mecca of like flat, beautiful trails, like off-road trails. And I was like blown away by some of the stuff that I found. I was like, we should host races here,
Yeah.
you know, and so coming to think, if I build this route, I advertise, get this route out to people, then they can do their own sections along the route, the same way that people do sections of the Appalachian Trail. And, so I'm looking forward to getting back into that work and feeling better about myself about doing it. So, that's kind of what this next trip that I'm going to be doing is kind of about.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk about it then. So we got Ultra Skate coming up. Miami Ultra Skate is February 15th. And you've got plans to sort of not skate too old. You're going to skate past Miami and do some sort of finagling to get back to Miami eventually. But tell us about your next adventure.
Yeah. So when I was on the Appalachian Trail, everything in my life right now revolves around the Appalachian Trail. But when I was doing it, I was like, I'm going to roller skate across the country. And, because it's something I haven't done before. It's something I haven't attempted before. And I want you to know, first of all, that's fucking crazy. And it's never going to happen. And but I became enamored with roller skates. So I used to be on a roller derby team, a couple of different roller derby teams. I love roller skating. And roller skating for me is great because it's like a two-legged sport. So a lot of the distance skaters, they use two legs, they switch. Every skate I've ever done has only been one leg. And so, that of course does come with some muscle imbalances and stuff like that. So roller skating is a way for me to just go and even that out. And I just love the feeling of it. So after I realized, that's crazy to try and roller skate across that skate that I just did from Canada to New York. They could have been on roller skates, but I was like, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. I did that on the skateboard. And when I finished, I was like, well, I want to keep going. So, I want to bring roller skating more into my life. So I'm going to go and I'm going to roller skate the state of Florida, which is something I've done Florida 3 times now. I've skateboarded from Miami to Jacksonville. I've skateboarded from Jacksonville to Miami, and then I've done Miami to Jacksonville again on a skateboard. So this will be my 4th time now. Skateboarding the same route in Florida along Route 1 and Route A1A. This time it's going to be on the actual East Coast Greenway, but I'm going to do it on roller skates. And I think it will be easier because Florida's flat. I think it's going to be 523 miles, and there's going to be 600 feet of elevation for the entire thing.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that comes with some caveats. Roller skating is very different from skateboarding because you can't really coast as well. So you're kind of always moving. So we'll see if that's a big challenge, especially being on the flat. But yeah, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to roller skate from Jacksonville to Key West. And then I'm going to go get my van, bring my van back down. And then I'm going to do ultra skate also on roller skates. Mm-hmm. So, I've done ultra skate now 6 or 7 times, and my highest score is 251 and some odd miles. And I'm really proud of that. I think I still hold the course record at Miami. And but the last ultra skate I did 2-3 years ago, I think I skated until about like midnight, and I was just like, I'm over it. I'm done. And, we've seen other skaters do that in the past. If conditions aren't exactly perfectly right, they'll just stop because they know they're never going to do as well as they wanted to. And so I don't want to ditch the distance skateboarding community. This community was the biggest part of my life for the last 10 years, or what. And so it's like, how can I still skateboard, still be involved? Well, so instead of doing ultra skate on a skateboard, now I'm going to be putting my focus into this F skate T kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I can still do ultra skate on roller skates. Let's see how far I can do it on roller skates. Because right now, I don't know what I think that the record for roller skating is just whatever's been done during the past ultras, right? So it's probably like 130, 150 miles. I'll have to go back and check that. But so I want to go out and I want to see, how far can I do? How far can I go on roller skates at ultra? I'm a hiker. I'm a skateboarder. What's the translation to roller skating? So so I'm gonna basically condition myself by doing this Florida skate, and then going to jump into ultra, and I'm going to see how I do.
Nice. And for those who may not be as familiar with the geography of Florida, Key West is at least 100 miles further than Miami, is it not?
I don't know. I don't think it's 100 miles.
It's not? I thought it was. I don't know. We stayed out in Key West one year for the event, and it was like it was like a 2-hour drive.
Yeah. Well, and there's also like this huge bridge that you have to cross, and I'm a little nervous about it. I'm a little nervous about it on roller skates.
So I know Chip has done it. Chip Walter. You could contact him, ask him what his take. And then the Neasy Boys, Gio and Nick have done it.
Oh, they've done it? Okay. Yeah. So it's 166 miles from Miami to Key West. Okay, so you're absolutely right. So that's a big portion of the trip. But yeah, so I'm going to begin in Jacksonville on the 1st of February, which will then give me 14 days to do it by roller skate. So that's 14 days to get from Jacksonville to Key West, take a plane back to my van, and then drive my van to Miami and then do ultra skate.
Okay. And your van right now is at Clark's.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a whole thing.
That's gonna be quite the adventure, especially following it up with an ultra skate.
Yeah, well, so I've done this before. So I've skateboarded Florida, and every time I've done it has been right before an ultra.
Okay.
So so I've done it with Spencer Steelman, and they have joined me for the trip, and it was like this awesome experience for us. But then the other 2 times that I did it alone, it was always before an ultra. So that way it's just kind of like a last hurrah of, has my training paid off? And, but this time it's a little bit different because, I did the AT, I did the 1,000 kilometer skate to New York, but then I just kind of stopped. I was pretty burnt out. I had taken a lot out of myself to do all that. And, like when I was hiking, I was doing 35-mile hiking days. And then I went straight into doing 60 to 80-mile skateboarding days. I was just go. And then when I stopped and I went back to my van and I was like, wow, there's nothing going on in my life. This is so weird. I started eating bad again. I started falling into old habits, drinking a lot. And, I kind of gained back all the weight that I lost, and I wasn't really doing too well. And, that kind of leads me to where I am now. And, so now it's like, so I'm not in the shape that I was when I was doing that. So I need to get this Florida skate under my belt so that I can kind of fall in love with what I'm doing again.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, life is seeming pretty bleak, but I know that once I get under the sun, I get 4 wheels under my feet, I'm going to feel good again. And that's just how my life operates. So I'm looking forward to it.
That first lap, like countdown goes down at ultra, you start skating, like there is a feeling you get where you're like, oh yeah, especially if you've been in the winter, like stuck in the winter weather for so long, maybe you haven't skated as much. Like it is kind of crazy how you're reminded why you come back, right, every year. And then shortly after you're like, why am I here again? Not 4 or 5 hours go by and you're like, shit. Like,
I know. So I'm trying to I'm hoping that I can do the ultra this year and, be into it. I haven't done a 24-hour event in a long time. My last ultra was 2 years ago. I think it was the COVID ultra where there was like only so many people. But so I'm hoping that I can maintain a sense of positivity about what I'm doing and not just worry about outstanding factors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Like your mental game is very important. more so
Yep.
than even being ready physically. Like if you don't want to do it, if you don't feel like doing it, it's going to be a lot harder.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I gave up. I gave up at midnight, and I had only done so many miles, and I was just like, I'm freaking done. If your mentality isn't there, your physicality won't matter.
Whereas if your mentality is there, you can do crazy shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So fingers crossed for good weather. Fingers crossed for no wind, but we'll see.
Always, yeah, always hoping for great weather. It's yeah, we haven't had a great year, and I think since that 2021 year, that was
Was it
one of the
really?
better ones.
Oh
The COVID
no,
year, yeah.
I blew it.
I don't know if you blew it, but yeah, it's tough. My last performance at Ultra was my worst, actually, and it was a lot of just like, yeah, I can't do this right now. Like I wasn't trained up for it, I wasn't mentally ready, and kind of just went for the good
Yeah,
time, but ended up
right.
being a little disappointed because you can always do more, right? When you're sitting there, you can always do more.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think that's the hardest part is just once you stop and then you see everybody going by, it's hard to not feel bad about yourself. Like, why did I stop? But
Yeah,
I don't know. You got to take it in strides, I guess. I
exactly.
mean, and that's kind of like the same thing with like giving up on not giving up, but quitting the my last cross country skate. It was like I I stopped. I jumped on a plane immediately, was at my van, and then I was like, "Huh, now what?" It was like I feel like I should still be moving. I feel like I should still be hiking. I feel like I should still be skating. And I had to sit and watch the days go by where I wasn't doing that. And it was an extremely isolating, depressing experience. And and the reason that I did stop that skate was because uh at some point in Connecticut, I can like just touching my Achilles, I can like feel it. It's like this horrible memory, but like my my leg, my foot wouldn't flex anymore. So
Oh
I
wow.
was basically skateboarding without bending my ankle. So I was tiptoeing and dragging my foot across. And so my performance, so we're talking waking up at 6 in the morning, out the door at 7. It's still dark out. And then skating, just dragging my toes because I can't get a full bend anymore because I don't know if it was tendonitis, just overuse, whatever. Um, and then just dragging myself, pulling myself along until the sun set. And that really dug into my mentality. I was really upset with my performance, and and then it was boring. It was boring. I was going so slow, and I was just draining myself. And I was like, and something that I've always told myself is, if you're not having fun, why do it at all? And that's like a way to live my life. Like if you aren't having fun, why are you doing it? I so then on one day I was leaving New Haven, Connecticut. So I was very close to the New York border. I was dragging my foot along, tiptoes, couldn't bend my ankle, and just one little damn ass rock, and I hit it, and the board went shooting back behind me. It went shoot, and we're talking 7 to 8 in the morning, like close to New York car traffic that I'm skateboarding in. This board went flying backwards down a hill, nailed the bumper of some car. The whole traffic stops in the middle of this square, and I'm limping and running down the hill, and I'm like, "Oh, that's my board. That's my board." I looked like a crazy person, uh, and so I pick up my board, and I'm walking up the hill again, and I'm just so demoralized. Like I just caused like a traffic thing. I was only 5 miles in, and it was already 9. I was going at a pace that I probably could have walked faster. And I sat down on this beach, and I was just like, I'm done. Like I'm not having fun. I'm hurt. Uh, I still believe in the goal that I'm going for, which is this F skate T thing, but I just don't think I can do it now. And so it felt like I left miles on the table. It like really dug into my brain, and I hated that. I hated that. So I do plan on doing that again. I do plan on creating that route, setting that route. But I think it needs to not be immediately after doing an Appalachian Trail hike. I think I need to be in the right mindset for it. So the next time I do it, I will start again in Maine, and I'll probably do it this year. I probably will do it this year, probably around the same time,
Okay,
maybe
cool.
like end of September, and because I want to create that route because it's something that nobody else has ever done before.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and doing the whole FSKT thing and going back with the knowledge you have too will be super helpful.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, the route is created. So I just need to like do it. That's like the one thing.
One thing you said there, and I guess before we wrap up, I just want to touch on, like, you mentioned you got back from the AT and you're like, well, I should be moving still. Like, what's next? And I think that whole feeling of like, all right, what now? Like I know I've felt that in many different parts of my life, and I'm sure I've heard it from a lot of endurance people, like well-known ones, and people I've had the pleasure of like interacting with myself, right? Where it's like this like syndrome you feel where you've been going every day, and it's been feeding you dopamine. You don't realize it, but it has, and then you stop and you don't have that flow.
Yeah.
And you think, oh well, I got to get back out there, but sometimes that's the worst thing for you, right? And you just end up hurting yourself.
Yeah. I've run into this depression a lot. And, my first skate cross country, it was like I got giardia, and, all of a sudden my skating days were shorter, and my hitchhiking days were longer. And then I just ended up back at my parents' house, and I was like, and then I got a job at Best Buy, and it was like, man, this sucks. It was like, this is a literal nightmare for me. And so 5 months later, because I was just so caught up in the what now, I cycled across the country, and, I've had to keep doing stuff like this because it's the only way that I feel human. Because otherwise I just feel like a lump on a log, like literally depressed, put down, beaten up, and just like the world just chewed me up and spit me out. And but then when I'm skating and I'm on the road, I'm in the open air, it's like, man, the world is my bitch. Like I
Yeah.
can take it on. I can grab it and tell it what to do. And that feeling is a powerful one. It's a powerful one.
Yeah. And it's the main character thing too, right? Like it's not a bad thing. Feeling like you can run the world, right, is motivating.
Right. I wish everyone could feel that. And I hope that they can. I hope that if somebody's listening to this, I hope that you'll get out on the open road, because I think it's the finest form of distance skateboarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Therapeutic.
Yes. I remember when I was when I met up with you in southern Maine, you were like, "Yeah, I never skate here. I would never skate on the highway like this before." So for anyone listening, I met up with Max, and then we the next day he came and did like 10, 20 miles with me, a pretty good distance.
Yeah, 20 miles.
And he was like, he's like, I would never get on the highway like that. He's like, you're really out here. You're really just doing it, and like, I remember it so clearly, because it was like, yeah, a lot of distance skaters now are into that competition mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot of training on closed courses. It's a lot of data. And we tend to forget, just what casual skating is,
Right. Right. Like,
of course, both of us had our watches,
Yeah. The long treks on skate decks, right, was like this whole just skating in these obscure places, cross countries, like, and that's something that like you're doing, right, but has kind of fallen out of is less trendy now than finding closed courses and putting up numbers.
Yeah, but like I said in the beginning, I think that there's kind of like, it's growing. I think that the attention is being shifted back because, the IDSA distance skateboarding doesn't have a lot of races going on anymore. It's not like in 2016, 2018, where every single person was like, oh, here's where I train, I can do a race. I think we do need to get back to that. But we're also finding now that because of the lack of races, we're getting a lot of people who are jumping into this through skating thing. I mean, there was just, two people who just went out and they did the Natchez Trace. That was a 400-mile skateboarding adventure. And, I reached out before and I was like, hey, can I send you a watch? Can you track this whole thing? Set an FKT for me. Like, you don't have to go fast. No matter if you finish it, it will be an FSKT. And they were like, if you messaged me a week before, then they were like, we would have done it. But, they stopped, they jumped into swimming holes, they slept behind, derelict buildings, and, they embodied all of it, and that's coming up. There's a resurgence of people who are just like, here's a location on a map. How do I get there via skateboard? And they just take what's in their backpack and they go. And I really, those people are inspiring. That's like the most inspiring thing. If you can just get up and go, the lack of planning is an inspiring thing in a day where we're surrounded by data all the time. We're surrounded by data and the ability to research all of the time. So I think it's kind of admirable when people just use it minimally.
Right. Yeah. And I was thinking about that same ride. I think it was Justin Bright and Moondog Roop are their names. The two guys who did the Natchez trail. The trail they went on, I'm wondering if there's more like this where it used to be like a native trail and then it became paved, and now it's like this cyclist destination where tons of bikes ride it, and it's not very trafficked with cars, so it's pretty safe. And they skated it. So I'm wondering if there's more trails like that, and having more people who want to do rides like this is how you find those trails.
Yeah. The only way that we're going to know the answer to that question, is there more trails, is if more people grab a backpack, throw a tent in it, and just get going.
Thru-skating, it's a thing. I guess it's so. Before we close off here, is there anything you want to say that we didn't cover? Doesn't have to be skateboarding related. Can be anything. You have the floor.
Man, I don't know. If there's. I think that we're in a unique time, right? We had COVID come a couple of years ago, and it really changed the landscape of endurance sports in general. I mean, we saw a massive resurgence in roller skating. I think that longboarding has caught the attention of people because of the popularity of e-boards, and I think that the sport is growing, and I think that it's not going to grow unless there's more people willing to kind of push the boundaries. I remember when I announced this, my last cross country skate. When I announced it, there was one of the French guys. He was like, "Why?" He's like, "Why are you going fast? Why are you trying to set it right?" He's like, "Just go have fun." He's like, "Just do it. Stop telling people about it." And I was like, I see where you're coming from, but
that's a great phrase. Just do it. Stop telling people about it.
Right. And so I don't know when you plan to release this episode, but by the time it's out, I'm probably going to be done with the roller skate down Florida. I'm not even going to post about it. I'm going to post about it when I'm done, when I do it. I'm not announcing anything. I've talked about it here and there, but I don't find it necessary to put it out there anymore unless it's getting done. And so I think that people deserve praise for going out and doing the unusual. But as I responded to the guy who said, just go do it, I was like, well, I'm trying to grow this sport. What brings attention to sport is crazy people doing crazy shit, and setting a record in the long jump. Wow, that was an amazing record. Setting a record in distance skateboarding is, wow, that's an amazing record, but we've never heard of this before. So how do we get people to hear about it? Well, you got to drum up some attention. It's marketing 101. You got to make people, you have to force them to be interested in it, right? So how do we do that? This dumb idiot just skateboarded across the country. This dumb idiot just did this, just crazy things that need to keep pushing the border. So if you, maybe you can't go out and just host a race. Maybe you don't have the chops to be, logistically handling that. But what you can do to grow the sport is go out and just do something great. I mean, just be great. Like everybody just... being great is subjective, right? It's within everybody's own right. So if everybody goes out and just does one thing where they tell themselves, I'm great, and then tell somebody about it, spark some interest. That's all it is. And just drum up some talk. And, so that's what I'm trying to do. And so then if I drum up some talk, I'll get enough interest in this F-Skate T kind of thing. That's how we make moves. It's
such a fine line, right? Where you're like, we're saying like, just go do it. Don't tell people about it, but then tell people about it. Right. Like it's hard to know like when you should reach out and like when you're just clout chasing. Like I'm thinking of like, you brought up the Natchez guys and like they had a little news segment on them too. And you said you did at the beginning of your, one of your cross country. So like news people, whatever you want to call it, they're always looking for a story. So like, by all means, like reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm sending out on this day. If you want to record it, put it on the news, feel free. Right. Like, and I think that does motivate people, right? Because I'm going to use another example. Earl Stout, who's been on the show, did a 50-mile ride on the Virginia Capitol Trail. And they did a little segment about him. Yeah, 100 miles because it's 51 way, 50 back. Yeah, you're right. Exactly, 100-mile ride. And they did a segment about him because he told them when he was going to leave. And like, it was little effort on his part to like reach out and get that content made because they had all the equipment. They had the newscast, right? They did all that. There's a chance that some kid sees that and is like, oh, I live on that trail. I'm going to take my board out there tomorrow. That's also growing the sport and like doing something great. Like you're saying, go out, do something great. That's great. It doesn't have to be a cross country skate. It doesn't have to be across a state. It doesn't have to be 100-mile ride. It can be anything.
Yeah. And, don't get me wrong when I say, don't tell somebody about it. That's kind of more like my personal thing because, I feel an immense amount of shame from not completing my cross country skate. I came in, I said I was going to do it, and then I fell apart, due to injury and mentality. And so I didn't do it. So, for me, I'm just like, well, I'll let you know when I'm done, and, but, it's one thing to say you're going to do it. And it's one thing to tell people, and it's one thing to go in like, I'm the number one, I'm going to do it. And, you need to, you can announce your skates, especially for an F skate T, you actually do have to announce it publicly beforehand because you can't just say, oh, hey, I did it. Haha. I just broke your record. You have to announce it. So, you got to kind of ebb and flow with, you got to read the room. You got to read the room. You can't just come out and say, hey, I'm about to do this and I'm going to be the number one ever. You got to set your expectations, set everyone else's expectations, say, hey, I'm going to attempt this. I'm going to attempt it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to attempt it. It all goes into semantics. And semantics come into play into distance skateboarding a lot. I think Adam Ornelas, he just did, he unofficially broke the marathon record, right? He did it at that velodrome, I believe. Was it at the velodrome?
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so, but his Instagram post, I'll never forget it because it was just so funny to me. It was like, this is the unofficial record. And, it's like, yeah, semantics are important because if he came out and said, hey, what's up, bitches? I just did the marathon. You all suck. They'd be like, all right, where's the GPX route? Where did you do it? That's not the same. It's different, and then they come and they scrutinize. So it's a game of semantics when it comes to record keeping.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he did a great segment on the whole marathon records and like how some of them were kind of like fabricated into being not completely right, where it would be like a 24-mile ride or like a 28-mile ride and they adjusted it to be a 26.2 and like that's not legit at all, like that's just not right. Right. Still great, still awesome, but like
right. And that's the same thing, with the F skate T kind of thing, we'll recognize rides, but if you don't have the data and everything to chop it up, you don't get to go on the leaderboard. You have to be able to back your shit up.
Which is one of the things I really respect about La Diga. Right, because it is only the one trail. There's only one route you can take, and the records have been kept really well.
Yes, they have.
Shout out! I'm forgetting the guy's name right now. Someone from Europe reached out to Carlos and did like a whole new spreadsheet on all the records, which we'll get out soon. But like, it's amazing to see how much data there is, and like you give the right person the data, they'll spit out all these graphs for you. We have those minds right in the community, so very cool.
Yeah. Totally. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. And I want to be sort of a catalyst into this record keeping thing. I'm 32 now. I'm not old. I still feel like I'm in my 20s, but I know that the day will come where I'm not going to be able to compete with this new generation that comes in, so, but I still want to be involved. I want to be a part of the solution. I would like, I'd like to be a part of more record keeping in more ways than just going after it myself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great.
Kind of like a graduation sort of.
It really is taking the sport in the right direction though. And I appreciate you, putting in that work. Obviously you're doing it for free, right? Just because you want to. So
of course. Yep.
That's awesome. 2 more questions before we actually sign off here. I always ask everyone this, but I think we know the answer. Where will we see you next?
Never. Don't look at me ever again. No, I'll be in Florida. I'll be skateboarding. I'll be roller skating
Yeah.
down the state of Florida, and you'll see me at Ultra Skate. And then it's up to the skate people, go host a race or something. I'm not in race hosting mode. I hosted the Skate Central Lakes race. I did the Sleepaway Camp race. I did the Boston Skate-a-thon. I hosted races for quite a while. So I'm excited to see more people stepping up, realizing this issue in the distance skateboarding community is that there's just not enough community events. So I'd like to see more and more people doing that. And so if you do, maybe I'll come to your race. I know Aaron Mohammadi's doing a race in Texas.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a big one. It's like a 3-dayer. And then we've got, there was Skate Camp that just passed. I didn't really follow up on that one. But, we got Ultra, and then what's next? You tell me. We'll figure it out. But I live in a van, have a van, we'll travel. I'll come to your event for sure, help you promote it, do whatever I need to. So where will you see me next? At your event.
Nice. That's
Dear
a great
listener.
answer. Dear listener, yeah. Any social media you want to plug?
No, don't follow me.
All right. Don't look at me. Don't follow me.
I'm on Instagram only, so you can follow me at Fossils for All. I always follow back. I think that it's important to reduce your ego. My ego, I've had to reduce. So I follow back everyone, and I think that you should too. Yes. But yeah, so you'll see me posting on Instagram. I'll be, talking about that. But, after Ultra Skate, I'm going to go hike the Arizona Trail. It's an 800-mile trail in Arizona. I'm going to kayak the Mississippi River in July. And I'm going to hike the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And then I'm going to skateboard across the country in late September.
Wow, so you were saying I'll come to your event, but it sounds like you have a lot of adventures already planned. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, message me before you plan your event. I'll let you know my dates.
Perfect. Hey, well, Calleigh, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day twice now because we failed yesterday. That was my fault. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I'll see you soon.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Give Clark my best.
I will.
Good luck with everything.